Okay, so the panel is complete. Thanks again for making time for our panel. Thank you to Stefan for this kickoff, of course, when we have now quite a few buzzwords in the air to debate on. And when we think of our topic now, how to rethink sustainability and the ecosystem that we need for that. I quickly introduce our other panelists, of course, Professor Dr. Stefan Gößling. We all know you from your keynote. We have Katrin Erben also with us. She's a sustainability expert at the Austrian National Tourist Office. Thank you for coming. We have Rebecca Armstrong with us here on stage. She's Head of Impact and Development at the Travel Foundation, joining us from the UK. And she is really engaged for tourism that benefits local people and protects the environment. But we'd like to hear, of course, more about it. Thanks, Rebecca. And last but not least, we have Nicola with us, Nicola Orio. He is an associate professor at the University of Padua, beautiful Italy, with the project of We Natur. What that means and what that project is all about, we will come to that in a second. When we talk about sustainability and how to rethink sustainability, I'd like to start with you, Katrin, from a destinations perspective. What comes to your mind and with what definition are you working of sustainability, the definition of sustainability that you're using in your work, in your daily work? Because sometimes we talk about the same thing, but we mean different things. So what is the definition that you're working with?
Well, it's certainly a tricky one. And after Stefan's presentation, actually, I would even say it's tricky to describe tourism and what you expect from tourism also in the future. And I think it's the rather same thing with sustainability. So there is the one thing that comes to your mind, and very often it's an ecological perspective. Then we had a stronger focus on resident sentiment, on the social perspective, the economic welfare, regional production, and so on. But in the end, and that's what I truly believe in, it's the harmony of all those dimensions. It should work out together. And if it works out together, we don't need the word sustainability anymore. And I think that's also something good, because that's something that many people cannot hear anymore. So really thinking about, again, what's there behind, how that contributes, and also what is the positive effect of tourism is actually shaping sustainability, because sustainability in the end makes a destination, a stakeholder, whoever, future-proof. And that's what I still hope for, that there is a future of tourism anyhow.
Rebecca, I'd like to forward this question also to you, coming from the Travel Foundation that I mentioned, for tourism that benefits local people and protects the environment, already the connection between the social dimension and the ecological dimension. But how do you do it? And what's your approach in that?
For us, we've been working for over 20 years as a non-profit in the sustainable tourism space, and I think what's become very clear to us is there are two key challenges, really significant challenges that we face, and the first of those is climate change, as Stefan has talked about so clearly. The industry's contribution to climate change, but also the impacts of climate change on tourism and the risks of inaction if we don't address those impacts. And also the second area that we're very focused on, as you've referenced already, is that question of who benefits from tourism. So taking an equitable approach to tourism development. It's not just about value, it's not just about volume, it's about where those people go, where they spend their money, how that value is distributed, and who benefits and in what way. And obviously those two things can be very interconnected too. If you think about climate justice, those issues around destinations that don't contribute very much to climate change themselves, but are significantly impacted by it, and yet are highly dependent on tourism. So all those things together, looking at the system, as Stefan's already referenced, I think looking at those systemic challenges and how we address those from the point of view of climate and equity is very much our approach. We don't have all the answers yet.
Yeah, but when we talk about systemic challenges, I'd like to stay here for a moment, because when we need to change systemic challenges, who is in charge and who should be in charge for that from your perspective?
That's a huge question. I think there's that kind of destination level and global level, I would say. I think some challenges need to be addressed at the destination level, and we need to put the power in the hands of those destinations. Individual companies are doing some great work, but actually if they're collectively not working at the destination level to look at how their operations are impacting. So if hotels are managing water really well individually, but there's still a water crisis at the destination, that's not a systemic response. That's still something that's not sustainable. So I think, and also at the global level, looking at aviation emissions, for example, how do we create a global level approach to emissions accounting, for example? Huge questions, but I think systemic responses needed rather than piecemeal efforts.
We're coming back to that because, Stefan, you're nodding as well. We come back to you in a second, but we'd like to come in with Nicola. Nicola, how do you rethink sustainability, and what do you see as a priority to our title of Rethinking Sustainability?
Well, I was talking with a colleague about how to think about sustainability, and one of the problems that we need, and this is part of our project, and also my role as an educator at university, to raise the understanding of sustainability, towards the impact of that, and also to create a new image of what is a sustainable travel, because it's very often actually related to kind of a plan of travel, the sustainable travel, while we are working on the fact that a sustainable travel can have a positive impact on the tourist and on the person. And talking about impact, my concept of sustainability is that any action, instead of thinking only about the future generation, which is the typical definition of sustainability, has to be evaluated in all its impacts and also all the levels of the number of persons taking this choice. Because one of the problems of impact is that the number of persons which are participating to the travel, to the structure, change a lot of the impact. It's not a single travel, it's not a group, but when there's the need of growth, the need of reaching also some goals about the incomes and so on, then the impact becomes relevant. And so our idea is to teach at all the levels how can you minimize the negative impacts of that. For instance, to cooperate with the social communities which are inside, so to create networks, because we believe that the most person interested in preserving the environment are the person living there, and that are working in tourism and also other activities, but they should be involved from the beginning. And also the notion of, which can be the short-term and long-term impact of any choice that was mentioned, also from the workers at all levels of tourism, from the design to the implementation of the travel.
Thank you. Stefan, we are living in these geopolitical, very turbulent times, to put it in a diplomatic way. And putting that into the connection of sustainability in the travel industry, would you say sustainability in the travel industry is at risk because sustainability maybe in general is at risk on this international policy playing fields?
That is a very important question. And obviously, if you look at Europe, if you look at the US, it's not looking good at the moment. I think we'll unfortunately see a period in which ambitions to advance sustainability will see backlash. It's going to be an uphill struggle for some time. At the same time, I see many very positive developments. You find the different countries and actors that make a difference, also because they manage to redefine their products. I mean, by the end of the day, if you ask people what they think, everybody wants to embrace sustainability. Everybody wants companies to be more sustainable. So there is a very good argument to engage with the issue because it is something that travelers should reward, if not with a greater willingness to pay then at least with perhaps loyalty or recommendation. And so I still think it's worth engaging with sustainability. But we need to be aware that the big changes will only be achieved through politics. And with most countries not having funds to support a green transition, it's hard to see.
Or the parties, because the polls in Germany also shows a different result. So what do we do against it? If you say the data shows, okay, everybody wants sustainability, but the polls show us a different image, what's the gap?
It doesn't mean that sustainability is no longer relevant for people, but it shows that other issues have gained dominance over sustainability. With the last elections in Germany, the Greens were at, I think, 15, 16%. Now they are down to 13. No other German party has even talked about climate change. Definitely nobody thinks that that is something that can be brought up on the table at the moment. It unfortunately means that we have to resolve migration because that is dominating everything. How that is going to happen, I have no idea. It's a very toxic issue to even touch. But as long as that dominates people's feelings, we have a problem. And that obviously is related to other issues. We have a growth development, an affluence development that is very skewed. Very few individuals having ever more money, a large proportion of the population struggling to make daily ends meet. I'm thinking we need a redistribution pattern in order to make some of these problems go away. But how likely that is with the billionaires now controlling the global media, for example, that is an open question.
I mean, looking to Austria, there are also some political storms around. But how to bring more sustainability on the agenda, not just on the agenda of everyone, but also on the political agenda, to rethink sustainability, really push it forward. From your perspective, what would help, or what is currently needed also from the Tourism Board?
Well, I do believe that it's, of course, essential to have a relevant framework coming from a political system to make sustainability efforts work. Nonetheless, or at least from my experience also within Austria, to working together with the different destinations within the country, it is a combination of top-down and bottom-up. So if we just wait until the top-down, the infrastructural framework is perfect, we are not going to move, at least not
fast
in
enough.
the time frame of your graphics as well. But it's the combination, and there are so many good ideas, there are so many innovative projects happening. Let's bring them together. Let's also see how projects can inspire a political framework to work on that, and how innovations, digitalization, sustainability, and many other components work hand in hand. So I do believe if we just wait for a perfect political situation,
we're going to die.
well, we're going to die anyhow at some point. But,
sorry, I didn't put that into your words, but I mean, yeah.
We would probably die more unhappy, let's say it that way.
Yeah. The power of collaboration, Rebecca, I come to you in a second, but I bring in Nicola here because the project We Natur is a European project, and I'd like to use that opportunity to come to you. Funded by Erasmus Plus program, and it's aiming the training of new professionals for sustainable tourism and exploring emerging markets, so different dimensions. One side, emerging markets, but also bringing in new professionals. Tell us more about the project and also how it comes in when we have to rethink sustainability and when we have to bring in more speed into the whole process.
The idea of the project started right after the pandemic, so it was kind of we think about the need to relaunch of the tourism, but it was not true. It was because the tourism by itself started. But the core idea of the project to train new professionals in this particular area to grow the knowledge of the relevance of this topic was the central one. And we focus on two particular targets: welfare, company welfare, and wellness in nature, which are niche markets actually. And there is always the problem that you mentioned, in the growth of the market means it will not be sustainable anymore. So probably will stay niche markets, but it's kind of a starting point to raise the idea of what's relevant, which is the importance of that, and to start thinking about creating new experience with sustainability as the first goal in mind. That means, as I mentioned before, cooperation with the locals, and clearly respect for nature and so on, and also responsible travel. So this is the idea of creating, starting from either professionals that wanted to reposition in the market, or students at universities or other high educational corporates, and to provide this particular experience, because we saw that at the moment it is covered, but it's not central for many of the degrees at universities. If you look at least I had a look at the university in Europe, not all around the world, but if you see all the syllabus about the programs, sustainability is mentioned, but it's not the core of the proposal. And probably we need some courses which are focusing on that, because this new professionality can help develop the individual destination to have their idea of sustainability. Not that we hear a lot about the greenwashing and so on, fake sustainable approaches, but probably it's also because we don't have professionals with a complete knowledge about that. So our goal is to create these professionals.
Mm-hmm. Rebecca, now coming to you, because when we talk about collaboration and putting, besides sustainability, different priorities in the center of a project in a working environment to create a new environment for these changes, how does collaboration come in there, and what was the lessons learned from your perspective and from your project that helped to create an environment for collaboration as well, to really create a welcoming environment for local communities to work together? What is the lessons learned? And maybe a failure as well, because we all like to learn.
Sure, I think it all connects back to the question about, is sustainability at risk as well? It's about finding a common language and a shared agenda around what destinations and what industry partners all want to see, which is thriving places, a healthy environment, happy communities that benefit from tourism. So we talk a lot about risk. Actually, we're also focusing on helping destinations look at risk, but look at it as a shared risk together with the private sector as well. So destinations become everybody's business. They're not, we're not working in silos, but also talking about resilience as well. So I think it can be language as well, in the environment that we're currently operating in, finding that common language, that it's about building resilience, it's about looking at future scenarios and what happens if we don't take action, and actually creating that shared agenda and that shared vision for tourism in places. So we're very much doing that with the partners that we work with in different destinations, bringing people around that common vision for the place that really puts the place at the heart of what we do, and then how does tourism fit around that, rather than starting with tourism. I think starting with the place and its needs and its priorities, and then going from there is a
Catherine, would you agree to start with the place and then to circle around, or is there another priority that you see?
Well, I think it works that way very well. There might be also another way, and I think, no, it's just the general thing. We always did it that way, so maybe there is also the moment for changing perspectives and see what else is possible. And then maybe we can, because it's always when I hear the word, it's nothing against the word per se, but as soon as we focus on resilience, I always have the feeling, okay, now we are just in reacting mode,
sure,
and not in active mode anymore. So that's maybe where we can do something else. And I mean, there are things we cannot change. Clear thing about that, and we have to adapt and we have to become more resilient, but maybe there's even more that we can do.
Okay, then I have a question, because I stalked you all on LinkedIn. And you wrote, yes, it's my hobby. Sustainability is more than a buzzword. It's a vision for the future driven by courageous pioneers. That's what you wrote ahead of our panel. And I wondered, when we talk about resilience, shall we also talk more about courage? And then the question came to my mind, do we even have the ecosystem for courageous pioneers when it comes to sustainable solutions?
Yes, we do. Short answer. Longer answer. It's courage that is happening in each and every project out there, because every time you change something that you were used to, you're showing that you have courage, and then you're already starting with one small piece or one small step towards another direction. And we are living, and I totally believe that, in a society that tells you, we always used to do it that way, it will be all right. But change is necessary, and change is all over the place. We are in a phase of transformation, And if we have the courage to actively participate, we might be able to have a change in a positive way and not just a vicious circle that is tearing us down.
Stefan, would you agree that we need more tourist mood, more courage, also for destinations in the travel industry to create a rather sustainable ecosystem and a flourishing ecosystem for courageous, sustainable solutions?
Psychologically speaking, the one thing that humans really dislike is change. At the same time, we are a supremely adaptable species. And that means when change is coming, we will find ways to deal with it. But we don't want it to start with. And I think it's worth looking into those countries where change has been achieved through often politics. I want to mention Turkey here. Turkey introduced mandatory eco-certification for all of its hotels, 24,000. And they all have to go through it. It's mandated. And I'm sure that by the end of this process, you will have a hard time finding businesses opposed because they all have learned how to save money, to preserve resources. And also learning about your business is usually an opportunity and welcomed by managers. So that is one example where this would work. Take another example, completely different. Norway is now the first country in the world that does no longer have combustion engine-based cars. They are essentially, the new car registrations are now essentially 100% electric. It shows
an example from Germany as well, please.
Yeah.
Because it's always Nordisch. Sorry
I'm not
to say.
going to mention Deutsche Bahn.
Because rail travel is, on the fastest growing categories, as I learned earlier. So is this giving us a little bit hope in Germany? Yes and no.
I'm German, so I'm entitled to a rather negative opinion.
I tried.
It's hard to see that at the moment.
Okay.
And again, German railways is an example of how transport...
let's not go into that.
No,
You wanted to have an example.
There's other people with more examples, I think. Well, if you wanted to say something positive, then we have to be aware that the last government, through the Green Party, whether you like them or not, but there's never been as much change in terms of changing an energy system at the national level as has been in the past 2.5 years. Under the circumstances of the Ukraine war, that has been both a barrier and a trigger, but a lot has been achieved. The question is, will the next government continue these efforts? But it's not all that has been negative in the last legislation period. Some things have been achieved, but obviously there's different opinions about some of the measures.
Nicola, and then I come to Katrin again because I saw you're nodding. But Nicola, when we talk about what we mentioned with Stefan, rethink sustainability, that's our topic, and we're not open for change as human beings, but we all are driving towards change because without change we are running towards a very dark future in a way. So from your perspective, the ecosystem that we need to rethink sustainability, to have new solutions, to have a little bit more courage, what do you think is needed? More than we have it now, and besides, of course, the projects that you are involved with.
One term that came to mind when you're talking about resilience was serendipity, which is another human ability to find a new solution, a new direction when you have something going wrong. And maybe, which is not to go back as before, but to find a new direction. And we saw some serendipitous destinations in Italy, which are the ones more in risk due to sustainability problems. I live in a region, Veneto, which is one of the most touristic places. We experience already what you were mentioning, lack of snow in the Alps or rising tides, very hot in the cities during summer. But the destinations which still are in good shape, they don't change because they don't like to change probably. But the small destinations which are maybe more at risk they start finding new solutions. And I'm confident that this can be the idea. Another term that came to my mind when you were talking about the rethinking, probably just rebranding sustainability.
Rebranding?
Rebranding, to give a new idea of what sustainable is. Because we are thinking of sustainability as a problem you have to face, you make a tough decision against our expectation towards vacation. But actually, sustainable tourism can be a new brand, a new way to have a even more enjoyable vacation.
Rebecca, that brings me to what you mentioned earlier when we had a sip of water before, the perception of risk, because business as usual won't deliver the future that we need. So how do we change and need to change the perception of risk for a new business case, for example, as well?
I think it's really about building that business case for looking at future risks, looking at not just current impacts, not just where we are now, but actually where we'll head up where we'll end up if we keep going in the direction that we're going, without action. So I think it's building that business case, it's building confidence in taking that courageous action. Actually, that things like regulation are coming, whether businesses like it or not, and actually by getting on the front foot and taking action now, they'll gain competitive advantage by being that first mover, because it will come. Change will come, whether businesses want it or not. But actually, by being in the driving seat and by looking through that risk lens and the lens of opportunity as well. I think to Nicola's point about making better experiences, making better products as a result. If you're intentionally building sustainability into what you're producing by design, if you're creating better itineraries, better experiences, those are all things we're working on with partners in Scotland right now, for example, looking at every part of itineraries that their tour operator partners are working on. Actually, how can we just make it better so people aren't buying a sustainable holiday, they're buying a great trip that does well by the communities, is lower carbon, is a better impact for local people. Let's try not to use the word sustainability if we can help it. Let's talk about better and more positive.
I cannot leave this panel undone without mentioning artificial intelligence. It's the buzzword of the time, Katrin. So you've got another 10 seconds now for the last question. When we combine a little bit of everything, what you mentioned, Rebecca, this rebranding of sustainability, this new ecosystem that we need, more courage, more resilience. From your perspective, maybe as a brief food for thought that we can take home, how should artificial intelligence help us on that journey?
Give me 10 seconds for that.
There are people working on that
for a lifetime. I think it can help us to focus on our resources on more important things, but nonetheless, I'm also the one who is not praising AI all the time, because we cannot forget that there is also a CO2 footprint, and very often it's not used in the way that it should be used. So it's still an ongoing journey. It's not going away. So we have to find a way that works for all people involved and all tools involved, but there's also the sustainability aspect, and that should not be forgotten.
And I'm so looking forward to continue our conversation, maybe on the next ITB in that regard, because then we have new developments to discover.
Love that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your insights. Professor Dr. Stefan Gößling, Katrin Erben, Rebecca Armstrong, Nicola Orio. This is your round of applause. Thank you. And stay seated for a moment, because I'd like to give you an idea of what's coming up next when we talk about immersive experience versus simplicity. This is coming up next, so stay seated and give us a few minutes to set up the scene for our next session. Wonderful to have you. Thank you so much, and welcome to ITB Berlin.